Today's manga is Majime no Jikan, or A Serious Time. Majime no Jikan stars Uemura Kazusa, who is a young teenage girl who unfortunately has been recently killed in an accident. She quickly finds out soon afterwards that she has become a ghost as a result. Thankfully, it's not all bad because it's not like she's the only one who has to deal with these circumstances, as she's surrounded by tons of ghosts around her. However, the sudden loss of life and regrets she has remaining leaves her quickly frustrated with the situation. Her friends seem to get over her death easily, the person she has a crush on was actually in love with another girl, and her mother is left in a state of depression for the majority of the manga. So if she wishes to pass on to the afterlife, she'll need to be able to learn to let these things go. The story of Majime no Jikan is a short and sweet one, only lasting 9 chapters total, so I imagine for most people it will only take an hour or two to read. Obviously, this means things are paced quite briskly, so things never really seem to drag, and it's never boring. The biggest issue is that the manga is of course pretty predictable on what direction it's going by the end, but considering it's obviously not a very ambitious manga, and it's more just a setup to tackle themes and messages, I'm pretty forgiving on that front. The main struggle most characters go through is dealing with the fact that people around them might forget them at some point. While of course being able to move on might be seen as a positive action to those of the living, for those who are already dead it acts as the final stake in the coffin, which of course brings great loneliness to the characters. I have to give the author points for creativity of having the dead world being fairly chill and not nearly as angsty as you would imagine. While there are a few ghosts that fall into that category, overall it's a welcome change of tone even if it can be a touch overly goofy at times. The characters are alright, but probably will be mostly forgettable. Mostly the story centers on Kazusa and her sadness and irritation about becoming a ghost. Fair warning, I can almost guarantee the main thing that will irritate people is Kazusa because she can be a bit obnoxious. Though the story justifies it pretty well, and it's not like she goes too terribly far, but when she's seen bullying a girl for rather petty reasons, I can see a few people losing some faith in her. Granted, her development isn't too bad for such a short manga, and I would say, at least by the end of it all, she became rather endearing to me. The other two interesting characters are Tamao and Kyuji, mostly due to their interesting tragic pasts. Kyuji is interesting because of his firm belief to simply act as an observer and will constantly lecture other ghosts for bad behavior, while Tamao is interesting because he's clearly a bit corrupted, but still develops a tad and has a few good scenes. In fact, my favorite scene in the manga involves Kazusa telling him about her past in order for her to raise her spiritual powers. However, Tamao responds not by tempting her, but by telling her that she had a very good life and she should be grateful for it. The rest of the cast is rather bland or forgettable, but considering the manga really only has the time to focus on Kazusa, that's mostly okay. Art-wise, it's pretty decent, but nothing special. The comical facial expressions are typical generic lameness that has polluted manga for a while, but the subtle grim expressions of the characters when the situation calls for it are a definite strong point. To give it more credit, the onryo, or the corrupted spirits, are all drawn in a very cool and expressive fashion despite usually being nothing but a black mist and a set of eyeballs. Anyway, it's better than average in this department, but nothing special like said before. Overall, this is a manga that's more interesting for the themes and messages more so than anything else. I can imagine it will give you at least some brief entertainment and possibly something to ponder on, but don't go into this one expecting too terribly much. And I would go into spoiler territory here, but this manga is so short that while I was doing it, I realized there really isn't much to talk about. The characters are a little bit too simple, the story is a little bit too simple, and there really just isn't much to discuss other than how I feel about certain themes and messages it presents, and I think we all are going to have different interpretations of how we feel about that. The most I can say about it is I don't think the manga really had any weak scenes, despite the scenes with Kazusa being rather overly goofy and being overly petty. But other than that, I think the manga is mostly fine, and that's really all I can ask for such a short manga. It entertained me for the afternoon, and yeah, it was fine. So sorry for the short review, but it is a very short manga. Don't worry, if I ever read a manga in the future, it will be in-depth from now on. I won't be doing these short reviews as long as the manga is at least 5 volumes from now on. This one was only 9 chapters, so it was kind of difficult to make up that content. Anyway, just read it on a free afternoon or something if you got nothing better to do is my recommendation.